Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
The campground was bustling with activity as I made my rounds, checking in new arrivals and ensuring everything was running smoothly. It was a typical summer day, the air thick with the scent of pine and campfire smoke. Little did I know that I was about to encounter a series of Karens that would test my patience and professionalism to their limits. As I approached Site 42, I saw a large fifth-wheel camper being maneuvered into place. The husband was carefully backing it in, following my hand signals. Just as they were about to perfectly align with the hookups, a shrill voice pierced the air. "Stop right now," a woman burst out of the passenger side of the truck, her face contorted with anger. "You incompetent fool," she screeched, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You've made us park facing the wrong direction. How are we supposed to get out of here?" I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Ma'am, I can assure you that—" "Don't you ma'am me," she interrupted, her voice rising even higher. "I want to speak to your manager right now. This is unacceptable." By this point, several nearby campers had emerged from their RVs, watching the spectacle unfold. I could feel their eyes on us as I tried to explain. "Ma'am, if you'll just let me—" "Harold," she yelled, cutting me off again. "Harold, get out here and tell this idiot that we're facing the wrong way." Harold, a tall man with a weathered face and a look of exhaustion, stepped out of the truck. He surveyed the situation for a moment before turning to his wife. "Marge, honey, we're parked correctly," he said softly. "The hookups are always on the driver's side." Marge's face turned an even deeper shade of red. But, she sputtered, looking frantically between Harold and me. "Thank you for your help," Harold said to me, nodding apologetically. "We can take it from here." As I walked away, their voices grew louder, making it impossible not to hear the escalating tension behind me. Marge's words cut through the air, sharp and biting. "Why didn't you back me up? You always do this," she snapped, her voice dripping with indignation. Harold, clearly caught off guard, stammered something unintelligible in response, but Marge wasn't letting him off the hook that easily. "You had one job, Harold," she hissed, her frustration boiling over. "I look like an idiot out there because of you." There was a pause, followed by the sound of Harold's weary sigh, the kind that comes from years of these kinds of arguments. "Marge, I didn't think—" he started, but she cut him off before he could finish. "Exactly, you never think, that's the problem," she spat, her tone rising with each word. I quickened my pace, pretending I wasn't listening, but it was hard not to notice the pure venom in her voice. Whatever facade they tried to maintain during the meeting had crumbled, leaving their raw emotions exposed for anyone nearby to witness. I shook my head, hoping that would be the end of the drama for the day. But as I've learned in this job, hope is often futile when it comes to dealing with entitled campers. Later that evening, I was making my final rounds when I noticed a white Lexus parked in Site 57, which was supposed to be vacant. There was no parking pass visible, and I knew we had a late arrival coming for that spot. Sighing, I radioed the office. "Hey, we've got an unauthorized vehicle in 57. Can you check if anyone's registered it?" "Negative," came the reply. "No one's mentioned having an extra vehicle. Want me to call the tow truck?" I hesitated. As tempting as it was, I knew that would only create more problems. "No, let's try to handle it internally first. I'll leave a note and we'll deal with it in the morning." I quickly scribbled out a warning notice and tucked it under the windshield wiper. Then I went to meet our late arrival and guide them to an alternative site. The next morning I was barely through my first cup of coffee when the office phone rang. Sarah, our receptionist, answered it, and I could tell from her expression that it wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "Yes, ma'am, I understand you're upset," Sarah said, her voice strained. "But parking in unoccupied sites is not allowed. It clearly states in our rules that—" There was a long pause as Sarah listened, her face growing increasingly red. "Ma'am, please don't use that kind of language," she finally said. "If you'd like to discuss this further, I can have our manager." Suddenly, Sarah held the phone away from her ear. Even from across the room, I could hear the shrill voice screaming obscenities. "She hung up," Sarah said, looking shell-shocked. "But I have a feeling she's on her way here." Sure enough, 10 minutes later, the door to the office burst open. A woman in her 50s, dressed in designer yoga pants and a silk blouse, stormed in. "Which one of you idiots left that ridiculous note on my car?" she demanded. I stepped forward, keeping my voice calm. "Ma'am, I left that notice because your vehicle was parked in a reserved site without proper authorization." "Do you have any idea who I am?" she sneered. "I'm not going to walk all the way to your stupid overflow lot when there are perfectly good empty spaces right next to my site." "I understand it's inconvenient," I said, "but those sites are reserved for other campers. We had to relocate a late arrival last night because of your vehicle." "So," she scoffed, "that's not my problem." I paid good money to stay here, and I'll park wherever I damn well please. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that losing my temper wouldn't help. Ma'am, you have two options. You can move your vehicle to the overflow lot, or we can charge you for the additional site you used. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You wouldn't dare. I'm afraid we would, I replied firmly. In fact, considering the inconvenience caused to the other camper, we'd be within our rights to charge additional fees as well. For a moment I thought she might actually explode. Her face turned an alarming shade of purple, and she opened and closed her mouth several times without any sound coming out. Finally she managed to sputter. This is outrageous. I'll have your job for this. I'm going to call your corporate office and tell them exactly how you treat your valued customers. Feel free to do so, I said, handing her a business card with our corporate contact information. In the meantime, will you be moving your vehicle, or shall I add the extra site fee to your bill? With a final glare that could have melted steel, she snatched the card from my hand and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Sarah let out a long breath. Well, that was intense. I nodded, already dreading the inevitable complaint that would be coming down from corporate. But I knew we had done the right thing. Rules were rules, and if we let one person get away with breaking them, soon we'd have chaos on our hands. As the day wore on, I found myself dealing with an endless parade of minor complaints and issues. A family upset because they couldn't have a campfire during the fire ban. A couple insisting their yappy dog should be allowed in the pool area. A group of teenagers trying to sneak alcohol into the park. But it was the incident at Cabin 12 that really took the cake. I was just finishing up some paperwork when Sarah called me on the radio. We've got a situation at Cabin 12. The guest is demanding to speak to a manager. Suppressing a groan, I headed over to the cabin area. As I approached Cabin 12, I could hear a woman's voice growing increasingly shrill. This is completely unacceptable, she was saying to one of our maintenance staff. How am I supposed to find my way to the bathroom at night? I could trip and break my neck. As I got closer, I saw a middle-aged woman gesticulating wildly, her designer sunglasses perched on top of her perfectly coiffed hair. Is there a problem here? I asked, putting on my best customer service smile. The woman whirled to face me. Are you the manager, finally? Someone who might actually be able to solve this ridiculous situation. I'm the assistant manager, I replied. How can I help you? This campground is a safety hazard, she exclaimed. There's no lighting along the paths to the bathhouse. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? I blinked, momentarily taken aback. In all my years working here, this was a new one. Ma'am, I said carefully, we intentionally keep the lighting to a minimum to preserve the natural camping experience and to avoid disturbing the local wildlife. Natural camping experience, she scoffed. I'm not here to commune with nature. I'm here for a relaxing vacation, and I can't relax if I'm worried about breaking my ankle every time I need to use the restroom. I glanced at the cabin behind her, knowing full well that it was equipped with its own bathroom. Ma'am, your cabin has a private bathroom. There's no need for you to go to the bathhouse at all. She waved her hand dismissively. That's not the point. What about other guests? What if someone gets hurt? You'll have lawsuits on your hands. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay professional. We provide flashlights in all our cabins and recommend that guests bring their own lighting for nighttime use. It's standard practice in most campgrounds. Well, it shouldn't be, she insisted. I want you to install proper lighting immediately, or I'll be leaving a scathing review online. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said, my patience wearing thin. But we won't be changing our lighting policy. If you'd prefer a more urban setting, I'd be happy to recommend some nearby hotels. Her mouth fell open in shock. Are you kicking me out? Not at all, I replied smoothly. I'm simply offering alternatives that might better suit your needs. If you choose to stay, we'll be happy to provide extra flashlights for your comfort. For a moment, I thought she might actually stamp her foot in frustration. Instead, she let out a huff of indignation. This is ridiculous. I'll be speaking to your corporate office about this. Of course, I said, handing her another business card. They'll be happy to explain our policies in more detail. As she stormed back into her cabin, I couldn't help but shake my head. Sometimes I wondered why people who clearly hated camping chose to stay at a campground. The rest of the day passed in a blur of check-ins, minor maintenance issues, and the usual campground drama. By the time I clocked out, I was exhausted and more than ready for a cold beer and some peace and quiet. As I walked to my car, I passed by Site 42. Harold was sitting outside his RV enjoying the evening air. When he saw me, he raised his hand in a friendly wave. Hey there, he called out. I just wanted to apologize again for this morning. Marge can be a bit high-strung sometimes. I smiled, appreciating his gesture. No worries, it's all part of the job. He nodded, a look of weary understanding on his face. Still, it's not right. You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of behavior. Thanks, I said. I hope the rest of your stay is more enjoyable. As I drove home, I couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. It had been a challenging one, full of entitled Karens and ridiculous demands. But for every difficult guest, there were dozens of wonderful people who truly appreciated the beauty and simplicity of camping. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new Karens to deal with, but it would also bring the satisfaction of helping families create lasting memories, of seeing children's eyes light up as they roasted their first marshmallow, of hearing the contented sighs of couples watching the sunset together. And that, I reminded myself, was why I loved this job, Karens and all.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.